Hey, IYCA community, Jim Kielbaso here, and I want to address some topics that have been coming to me now that a lot of people are starting to get back to training after a long shutdown. And a lot of people are wondering kind of where to start, and they're thinking that maybe they're overdoing things and that athletes should go back really slow, and that they're also trying to figure out for some reason what point in the LTAD framework uh, athletes are. And there seems to be some confusion about how to begin and where to begin and what to do and how to kind of put all this together. So I just want to clarify a couple things for you so you can kind of clear your head with some of these things as well. The LTAD framework is a framework. It is not a linear progression. It is more of a scaffolding or a spiral type of progression. Athletes are not going to progress in every way, in every measure, and every form of athleticism at the same time. You could easily have an athlete who has gone through several stages in a maybe a sport perspective, but still has a very low training age from a strength training perspective. In that regard, so you may have an athlete, and I see this all the time. I will see athletes who are very good baseball players, volleyball players, soccer players. They get to high school. They've done a tremendous amount of training for their sport. So they have a high training age, and in the LTAD framework of developing for that specific sport, when you take certain components of that sport, they've passed through many stages, and they're able to compete at a fairly high level, and they can handle fairly high volumes of training fairly well. But maybe they haven't started to do things like strength training, and maybe they don't have the flexibility or mobility that they should to prevent some injuries, or to maintain their level of overall athleticism. So that doesn't mean that you need to back everything up, and that athlete that's been competing at a high level, once you get them and you realize, whoa, their training age from a strength training perspective is at a very beginner type level. That doesn't mean that you should go to the coach and go to the family and say, whoa, this kid needs to be completely taken out of everything because they have a really low training age and they need to get through all these stages of the LTAD framework before you can resume competing again. Please don't make that mistake. That's not how athletes are developed. Sometimes athletes will be very developed in certain areas and not in other areas. And it's not only okay, but it's recommended to go back where necessary and to stay forward where they're good. So you don't want to take athletes who are good and completely eliminate all of their strengths and all the good things that are happening. You're going to want to go back and try to bring up areas that are concerned, or that are limiting their development, or that have the potential to cause problems for them down the road. And it could be anything from their levels of strength to their levels of endurance to, like I said, their flexibility and mobility. It could be psychological. It could be hand-eye coordination. It could be balance, body control, the ability to rotate. It could be speed. Whatever that is, don't let athletes feel like because they're deficient in one area, they're deficient in all areas, because that's not the case. And we've seen many cases of athletes who are incredible in certain areas and have deficiencies in others, and they are able to compete at high levels. So don't think that you have to regress every single thing about an athlete. Now, when we're getting into like the retraining phase with a lot of athletes being able to start training again, a lot of coaches are really worried about overdoing it with athletes. Now, I think that that's great. You should start slow. If athletes have been sitting around during the shutdown for months and months, they should start slow, and there should be a nice slow progression. But I also want to make sure that you understand the science on accumulation of high volumes of training, and that creating essentially like an armor, or there's a protective mechanism when athletes have slowly been able to grow accustomed to high levels or high volumes of training. There's a real injury prevention benefit to being able to train at high levels for a long period of time. There's also, though, that balance that you have to strike with overdoing it. And I see now a lot of athletes or a lot of coaches really wanting to pull back almost too hard on athletes and not do enough with them to get to that armor stage, that I'll call it, like where that accumulation of high volume over long periods of time can help prevent injuries and can help long-term performances. So yes, start out slow if athletes haven't done anything, and gradually get them used to fairly high levels and high volumes of training. And I don't want to say as quickly as you can, because you don't want to change the volume rapidly. That is where athletes get in trouble, and where coaches get in trouble, is when they are used to training at one volume and all of a sudden there's a huge spike. And you'll see that in season. And it may be, you get halfway through a season and things aren't going well. So the coach decides, hey, it's because we're not in shape, or they're upset about a game, and they just run and run and run, and they really have a dramatic spike quickly in the overall volume of training. That is where problems can occur, because it then takes a long time for an athlete to recover from that. If there is a subsequent increase in volume for another day or two, that's where injuries start to occur. So have a slow increase and try to get athletes used to a high volume of training very slowly. So when they're coming back, let's do it slowly. Let's try to figure out what their limitations are, and let's go back and fix some of those things. But let's not let one aspect of training age dictate the training age of the entire athlete. So I hope this helps you kind of think about what you're going to do with athletes who are getting ready for the next season, or a new athlete who hasn't been doing much and needs to get ready quickly for maybe a fall sport. And kind of helps you think through how you're going to balance high volumes of training, which can be really good, with overtraining, and how you're going to go back and fix things that maybe weren't addressed as at a younger age. But you don't have to take everything back and make the athlete feel like they're not even an athlete anymore, even though they can compete at a high level. All right, this is something that's hard for me to balance. I think it's hard for everybody to balance sometimes, because we get caught up in figuring out, I found out that this athlete has this limitation, so we're going to change everything. We're going to back everything up, and we're not going to let them train again or practice again until we fix it. That's not realistic. That's not going to help the athlete long term, and it's not going to allow the athlete to continue to develop with the rest of their team and with what everybody else is doing around them. So hopefully this helps you think about things a little bit right now as we head back into training and get ready for fall sports. All right, shoot me some questions if you want some clarification. Hopefully this gets you thinking.